Welcome to Dan's On Site with Dan Dutton and Dan Goley, a podcast and YouTube show dedicated to all things real estate, delivering market information, interviews from all perspectives, and tips for everyone involved in or interested in real estate. We'd love to hear from you. Dans@dansonsite.com. All right, welcome to Dan's On Site. It's been a couple weeks since we've put out an episode, but that's because we've been preparing for our quarterly reports. And we have a bunch of them that we're excited to share with you guys. First up, though, we have Grace Newton and jyork from the Omni Retail team in to talk about the Omaha third quarter retail report. As always, make sure you find us at dansonsite.com. Subscribe and like us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and Dan's On Site on YouTube as well. As always, I'm joined with my co-host, Mr. Dan Goley.
And I'd like to say, this is the first episode with our brand new backdrop. As you can tell, there are some wrinkles and stuff, but we'll work all past that. But
we'll steam that out for you
guys. It'll work out in the end.
Well, you don't have to worry about Dan screwing up the screen behind us anymore.
Yes, I know. I was leaning forward in the button.
And Dan has a big announcement, but maybe we'll wait until we got a new episode, a new quarterly report coming out of state. Then maybe we'll announce your big announcement to the crew.
Sounds good.
All right.
I'll put that later.
So let's get started here, guys. Before we take a local look, let's talk about retail from a national perspective. Talk about what retail sales have looked like since March, since COVID, since everything.
Yeah, I mean, I would say retail sales have still been good, but there's definitely been a shift in what people have been spending their money on. Lots less traveling, the amusement parks are closed, tourist sites, so people aren't spending as much money on flying, travel costs, hotels, things like that. However, they have been spending their money on other things. As we all got to work from home for a little bit, we saw people spending money on redoing their home offices with like computers, desks, chairs, things like that at Office Depot, places like that. People were also spending a lot of money on home improvement projects, outside landscaping in the spring and summer, mulch, things like that. I think it made it easier for people to line those things up with working from home. And then is with the stimulus checks as well, there was a huge influx of cash put into the marketplace where people were continuing to spend that as well. I think it'll be interesting as the holidays come up, with less family gatherings, it'll be different to see how people are spending their time and their money as well. So
It's been really interesting. I mean, I think you're right. Our family's talking about Thanksgiving. How do people travel in? How do people communicate? Is it on Zoom? Is it face-to-face? Is it family gatherings? And those, those are kind of some of the things people talk about. I remember we've talked about it in 2008. We were in that crash, and everybody hit freak out mode. It was the world is going to come to an end. How is this latest cycle with COVID and stuff? You hear the word bankruptcy. Is bankruptcy really a thing? Is it kind of a thing? How does it apply to the COVID era?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take you to look too hard to find bankruptcy in the headlines everywhere. But I think it's important to look beyond the headlines too. You Google retail bankruptcy 2020 and certainly going to get a decent list of retailers that have filed. Most often though, we're seeing those bankruptcies being sped up from COVID. These were retailers that were heading in that direction anyways, and COVID, as it did with a lot of things, sped up those filings. Mm-hmm. It's important to look at some of those filings though were these retailers trying to get protections so they can come out of those bankruptcies. And we've seen a number do that or are in the process of that. And it was really those retailers where once COVID hit and once we saw retail sales just take a dive in April, that couldn't keep up and that couldn't make it to when those stimulus checks hit, when that money flooded the market. So I really think it was COVID sped up what was going to happen already, but we're seeing many companies get brought out of bankruptcy too.
I think, Dan, you've said it many times before on episodes that COVID probably hasn't caused any bankruptcies that weren't going to already happen. To your point, it's just sped up the process. So, Jordan, you hit on a couple segments out of all of them that did well: home improvement, probably office furniture, Office Depot, those kind of guys. We know theaters are struggling, sit-down restaurants are struggling. Tell us what other segments have performed well during COVID.
Yeah, I would say like grocery stores being one of them. People are cooking at home more, more hesitant.
Eating more.
That too. More hesitant to like go sit down at a restaurant. So I would say drive-thrus have also, really done well. I've heard of some interesting thoughts on new drive-thru concepts and how people will start to change their footprint. Maybe we'll have more fast food restaurants or whatever that look more like Sonic with multiple drive-ups spaces to help speed up the process, along with curbside pickup.
Burger King put out a really cool concept where it actually lifted the restaurant off the ground and then put drive-thrus underneath the restaurant, so they'd be like 4 or 5, like an old bank, almost, where the main level was up here and the drive-thrus were underneath it. But anyway, some really cool concepts.
If you already had a drive-thru, it's like, okay, what's now? Like, how can we build a second drive-thru, or how can we do something crazy like that? And then those that didn't have drive-thrus are actively looking for those sites that maybe are now available to be able to do some sort of drive-thrus. So drive-thru is the name of the game in 2020.
I would say the people that have done the best have been those who have adapted with the change and been able to offer things like curbside pickup, delivery, things like that.
You go into any parking lot now and you almost see, every store has a couple of stalls set aside for those curbside pickups. And I think it's important too for those landlords to work with those tenants to be able to allow things like that.
So what else are you seeing in the marketplace? I mean, you're seeing the transition of, you mentioned Burger King. I know McDonald's are. Everybody's shrinking their footprint to kind of add one extra lane. While they're not taking as much dirt, they are, land, I guess, acreage. They are, adding another lane for service. But what other things do you see?
Yeah, I think to take a more local look here, and it's certainly not to minimize the impacts that COVID has had for our country, for our community. But Omaha did stay open more than a lot of other cities did, and opened back up sooner. And so, in Omaha, with the leasing we've done, we've been pretty much right on track with where we were last year with the amount of leases done. Super proud of what our team was able to accomplish during COVID to, help our clients out and get leases signed. I think we saw 3 restaurant leases signed within the last 6 months. At one of our shopping centers, we've leased up 60,000 square feet just this year, which is a really large number for that center in any given year. So really, there's a lot of activity going on in the Omaha retail market. I think people are being very opportunistic with spaces that maybe are coming available. COVID did not do any favors to those businesses that were already struggling. So like we said before, it's really just speeding up that inevitable. There's, as we look ahead into the fourth quarter, there's definitely some big questions, right? Vaccine is such a big question that's going to impact all of these industries. How are retail sales going to look in the fourth quarter? Kind of like Jordan said, we've got the holidays coming up, whereas a lot of people would be spending that money on experiences and travel. Is that money going to be funneled into retail sales? The experts seem to think so. So we should see a pretty big jump, in holiday spending. Will there be a second stimulus package that comes out, where more money is flooded the market? I think there's some questions for the fourth quarter, but there's also a lot of pent-up demand that we should anticipate.
If you guys haven't watched or listened to the episode Dan and I did titled Ghosts of Retail's Past, Present, Future, go back, listen to that, especially if you want more information on retail. We take more of a global look, I suppose, but we really get into the nuts and bolts of what's happening in retail and what's coming down the pipe in retail. I think it's fair to say that maybe there aren't smoking deals for tenants out there that landlords have held tight, but there are spaces coming available that maybe haven't come available in a long time. So if you're well positioned, you can really make some movements here. As always, find us at dansonsite.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Dan's On Site. I can't thank Jordan and Grace for coming in today. Thank you enough for coming in today. Dan, any parting shots before we
I love
exit?
it. I like it. You hear positivity. The world keeps trying to drive itself towards the negative, and so I'm glad to hear a lot of positive stuff happening.
Absolutely. As kind of we keep hearing in our industry is don't count out the U.S. retail shopper.
If you guys need retail brokers, Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, these two guys are the best, so please give them a call. We'll put contact information in guest profiles on the website, on YouTube, all that good stuff. So, as always, Mr. Goalie.
Thank you very much for listening.
And I'm Dan Dutton. We'll catch you with the office report next. Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks again for joining us. Find us on Facebook, at YouTube, Dan's On Site. All your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. We would love it if you hit the subscribe button and also leave us a review. Reach us at dansonsite.com.